Hello again, everyone. Thanks for tuning in for another session. John Lagman here from Bloomberg, the APAC Crypto FX Workflow Specialist. Thanks again for tuning in and for Kun Tai, Kun Gift, and the team for inviting us to have this very exciting fireside chat. So I'll hand it over to Mr. Tian Lee to introduce himself and his project or protocol.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I am Tian, the CEO, co-founder of Pendle. So very simply, Pendle is a protocol for the tokenization and the trading of yield. So among the use cases that Pendle can enable is the fixed income and also for users to speculate on rates on crypto. We started out in 2020, so this is our fourth year operating the protocol. First 2 years of the protocol wasn't a lot of traction, wasn't too great for us, but I think we've seen relatively healthy growth in the past year. And then for this year, we had a pretty significant breakout in terms of tractions on both the TVL and trading volume front. Yeah, more commonly these days, I think people would know Pendle to be the venue for points trading. But yeah, we can come to that in a bit.
No, I mean, definitely, I've been following you guys. I mean, I think we've probably met like 3 times once a year since 22. Definitely, I mean, must give you guys a lot of respect. I mean, I follow you guys. Your TVL has grown immensely. Now, one thing is obviously, as you mentioned, your yield tokenization model. It's seems quite innovative, revolutionary. What key kind of benefits does it offer to your users? Compared to, let's say, the more traditional yield farming?
Yeah, so I think to understand that, I'll have to just give a bit more context as to how we derived the yield tokenization part. So we started out in 2020. My co-founders and I, we were avid farmers of crypto assets back in August, September period of 2020, right? And back then, the general APY for a lot of these assets was hovering around like 10 to 20,000%. And as much as we liked the APYs, we knew that the APYs weren't sustainable and they would plummet at some point in time. So we wanted to have a venue to lock in the yield, but there wasn't an instrument for us to capture those opportunities and then lock in at the yield that we thought was desirable. And at the same time, we also was looking at TradFi, just judging by the fixed income product and the size of it in a conventional financial sector, right? And comparing that to the state of crypto at that point in time, it was very clear to us that a product that could enable rate swap or fixed income was absent. So that was our primary motivation. And then when we thought about a solution that we could design to help us capture this particular gap that we saw in DeFi sector back in 2020, I think there were two guiding principles. Number one is because of our background, we were much more familiar with AMM design versus order book. So previously, I served as one of the founding team members and head of business for Kyber, which is by today more known as it's a liquidity protocol and more known for its aggregation service. So that was like the starting point. And looking at the assets that we were dealing with, because yield trading was a new concept and it was also unknown to most people how to price these assets. So we thought it would make sense for us to delegate the price discovery to math formula, and then it helps onboard users and liquidity. So this was one. Secondly, because we were, again, operating in a very new segment at that point in time, there was a very steep learning curve. And beyond that, we also had to consider how we could source for liquidity. And again, in 2020, around November period, Aave and Compound, both of these are big lending markets, and they were sitting on about $20 billion of TVL collectively. So as a newcomer, it wouldn't make a lot of sense for us to compete for liquidity against these big guns, but instead it would make more sense for us to build on top of Aave and Compound, which is why our first assets were AUSDC from Aave and then CDAI from Compound. So this, I think, serve as the context of yield tokenization, right? Now, specific to what yield tokenization is, it was basically taking a yield-bearing asset like AUSDC, and splitting it into the principal token and yield token. So PT or principal token, right, represents the deposit, the original deposit into a certain vault, and then YT represents the yield component that the underlying asset generates. So I would equate this to coupon stripping. So if there's like a bond stripping, like a bond gets stripped into zero coupon and coupon. So PT is equivalent to zero coupon, and then the YT is equivalent to the coupon. So anything that the underlying protocol pays out goes to YT. PT will be trading at a discount, and then would be redeemable for the one-to-one for the underlying asset at maturity. So because of the yield tokenization, we have enabled new use cases and opportunities for traders in crypto. After the splitting of the yield-bearing asset into these PT and YT assets, we allow for these two bonds to be traded independently of each other. So effectively, right, if I'm a user and I want to lock in fixed yield, the easiest way for me to attain it on Pendle is to buy the PT asset and then hold it until maturity, and redeem it one-to-one for the underlying. And then conversely, right, another use case is like if a user wants to lever up his or her own exposure in a certain asset, they can do so by buying the YT. And this is a more capital efficient way to obtain the implied leverage. And there's no need for collateral. And as such, there's no liquidation risk.
Okay, great. Now, obviously, one key theme, I guess, in DeFi is always security and stuff. So, can you kind of shed light? I mean, obviously, you had experience with previous protocols, but can you shed light on, say, what kind of security measures, maybe audits, any other items that you guys have been implementing? Basically to, obviously to ensure the integrity of the protocol, and more importantly, I guess for people listening, might be their funds, user funds. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So security is of the utmost importance at Pendle. And specific to security, there are actually three aspects. Now we have the audit. So audit is the first layer. For Pendle V2, we've actually undergone 7 rounds of audits from third parties. It's a combination of individuals who are top auditors at Code Arena and organizations like Chain Security. They provide at different times of the past year and also before the contract was launched, we engaged these third-party organizations and individuals to help us review the contracts. We have another one that is scheduled for that has already started this month with SpareBit. So we have an ongoing effort just to make sure we take security very seriously. And then subsequently, with all the markets that we launch, we have also an auditor on retainer. That basically means that every month we will have several markets that we want to launch. And then these markets, prior to becoming public and open for public deposit, the contracts will have to be audited by an auditor as well. So that is a practice that we have in place. And then secondly, we also have bounty programs. So we have a venue that we work with third-party organizations like Immunify to allow individual contributors to report areas that can be improved on. So sometimes like they would suggest certain areas that can potentially be vulnerable, whether it's trivial or severe. there is at least a venue for them to do so. And then once after reported, they get rewarded depending on the severity of the bug that was found. And the third aspect is on insurance. We have lineup. We actually have collaborations with a few insurance providers on DeFi, and have coverage and protections that depositors can purchase. So yeah, broadly speaking, I think these are the three aspects that we have incorporated into our system to ensure security.
Sorry, can I check that? Someone who actually deposits, they can actually purchase the insurance themselves via you?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Through a third-party insurance provider, but yeah, these are pools that can be found, and we can recommend some products there.
Oh, nice. Okay. Now, as mentioned, you guys had like very impressive growth. Your head of institutional sales, Ken, I follow him on LinkedIn, and I'm always seeing like some new milestone, whether it's 5 billion TVL, whether it's some trading milestone and stuff. So one thing you find is there could be like a very steep growth curve, but as you hit newer levels and stuff, are you guys working on a lot of strategies to ideally sustain that rate of growth, or although if you accept it, will taper the rate of growth, but continue to grow and stuff?
Yeah, so I think we've been a great beneficiary of several narratives, and in retrospect, I think what has contributed to the traction that we have experienced so far is really on our ability to capture and affiliate the Pendle brand to big narratives. So, for example, in the past year, we benefited from the LST narrative, and then when Arbitrum was rising, we were also able to be acquainted with that ecosystem. So we grew together. And then this year, we've become a big beneficiary of the restaking narrative. So I think for context, with restaking narrative, it's really a term that got popularized by EigenLayer, and then several other protocols that we're building on top of EigenLayer, like EtherFi and Renzo, developed their own protocols and started attracting serious TVL to their platforms. Now, and one very important component of the restaking narrative was actually points. So Pendle, utilizing our existing technology, we enable points to be traded. So this makes it really interesting for different groups of users, because on the one hand, with the splitting of a yield-bearing asset from the restaking protocol into PT and YT, we allow for different users to express different views. So, for example, if a user is very, very bullish on the restaking product and EigenLayer, they can buy up a lot of YT. And then for someone else who wants stability, they can just buy the PT. So what we saw in the early part of this year was, as a result of the very bullish sentiment within the crypto ecosystem, a lot of users ended up buying YT because of the implied leverage that they were exposed to, and driving up the implied yield to 60, 70%. Now that means at the same time, the discount of PT was around 60 to 70% as well. So if you're an institution and you want to lock in that 60 to 70% fixed APY on Ether, Pendle was the best venue. And we attracted a substantial amount of interest from retail institutions, like this spectrum of users, because of the different propositions for users. And our view is that in the coming months, the points trading can continue to be can continue to be an interesting proposition for the crypto ecosystem, because it has proven its effectiveness in helping these protocols attract liquidity. So from our perspective, right, let's say where I think Pendle sits in is to help a lot of these up and coming protocols gain initial traction, and then after which they can have more leverage and have better conversation with exchanges, which will ultimately help with their token launch through Launchpad or Launch Pool. And then the points trading also forms a reference for the community on the price discovery when TG happens. So I think points will be here to stay because the proposition is quite clear. And then the strategy and the opportunity for us turns to identifying major trends. So for example, now we have set in sight that BTC ecosystem, like BTC L2s, could have a similar kind of impact as what EigenLayer had produced. And we want to be more involved in the Bitcoin L2 ecosystem. Again, because this year, Bitcoin has been the headline crypto, and with the ETF and a couple of other very bullish news, including the halvening, I think there's a lot to be excited about around Bitcoin. And just given the fact that there will be a lot more opportunities that users can utilize Bitcoin to generate wealth, I think we are anticipating a strong interest from various groups of users there.
Well, I mean, you talked about, I guess widening your group of users, let's say from the traditional, say, DeFi native. I mean, obviously you're targeting more mainstream users and whatnot. I mean, do you have like actual any set plans to kind of foster this kind of adoption? I mean, one thing's always, I guess, a barrier to entry can often be the kind of learning curve for DeFi, and maybe the complex nature of, I guess, your protocol with the yield tokenization and stuff. I mean, how do you plan to approach that?
Yeah, so I think it is true, and also like specific to Pendle, the learning curve is arguably steeper than many other DeFi primitives because it involves more complex strategies. The product design is just more complicated. So education continues to be one of the most important aspects that we invest resources into. And I think we have had some successes by focusing on this front. So we have a lot of case studies, and we have many examples through like previous integrations that we can showcase to help to better illustrate the propositions of Pendle. So like education segment is one. And then of course, like the product itself has to be solid and sound. So until today, we continue to make iterative improvements on the UI UX because now that we have live data set, we can observe how users interact with our protocol, and then we can make adjustments from there. Like sometimes we have this button that we put on the app, but nobody clicks into it. But then again, it contains very important information. So we needed to make that more blatant. So with trial and error, we can figure out how we can improve on the UI UX front, which is, I think, a very big driver of conversion. And of course, I think the third aspect is on the distribution of educational materials. Far too many times I've seen a lot of other products, very good tech, but because of the lack of distribution outlet, they ended up not gaining traction, and then eventually it just became another product that got forgotten. So we don't want to end up there. And I think one of our key strategies in gaining adoption is really to identify the target audience and the distribution channels. We have actually invested quite heavily in developing a network of thought leaders and influencers to help us reach to our target audience. So Twitter is our primary venue. Telegram is becoming another very important one as well, because what we typically do is because there are users already on Pendle, sometimes certain users make very interesting trade, and even after the trade, there still exists the opportunity. So what our interns or some of our team members would do is to highlight some of these trades, put it into tweet form or like pointers, and distribute it through our network of influencers and thought leaders, or through Telegram. And typically we see pretty healthy conversion there. And then of course, like as part of the distribution front, right? Ken, as you pointed out, he is our head of institutional businesses. He maintains relationships between Pendle and like key liquidity providers and funds. Many times when we spot opportunities, we would share these ideas with the relationships that we're managing. And I'd say a lot of time, the interested parties would act on it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Actually, when you were speaking, I remember, I think it was the first time we met. I think it was 2022 with one of your co-founders. What was his name? Gary or Greg? I mean, that's a joke.
Yeah.
But you were talking about how you were looking to redo your website at the time because you were saying that you found, I think, like you were talking about certain buttons people don't like to hit or whatnot.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it sounds like it's continuous kind of reassessing of things. Yeah.
Yeah, it has to be. Yeah.
I see. Okay. Well, along those kind of lines, obviously, as in general, the DeFi space kind of matures, and you've talked about how you guys how the market's evolving and stuff. What about how do you see your role evolving? What do you see as your kind of key challenges to be honest, or opportunities to be honest, just to stay relevant, right? I mean,
Mm.
something new comes out and stuff. So what kind of, let's say, opportunities you kind of anticipate, say, in the protocol in the longer term, which long term in this space isn't like a decade, it could be months or years, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, fair enough, fair enough. Like crypto definitely moves at a very, very fast pace. And
Yes. Yes.
um I think from our perspective, we have found a product market fit in points trading. So we definitely want to continue to be involved there and be aggressive. Right now, I think some users are still getting used to the idea of points trading, but
Mm.
our view is that it will persist for a much longer period in one way or another, right? There could be variations of points trading, but I think they will continue to serve as a very important way for new protocols to bootstrap initial liquidity, which is very important. Because without liquidity, protocols typically have a much harder time to attract developers to build any kind of products in that ecosystem. So I think we serve an important role in bridging that gap and helping with liquidity funneling to these new ecosystems. Now, the new opportunities for us is really to identify the upcoming trends like Bitcoin L2s, restaking assets, maybe an extended run on restaking assets because AVSs are still AVS basically is a core proposition of EigenLayer, and these are, I think, new opportunities that have yet to be explored. But of course, I think in the longer term, Pendle is also working on a new product to scale up yield trading. Because now that we see users taking genuine interest in trading yield and points, we believe that if we add a leverage component, we could encourage like even more creative ideas and strategies to take place. Case in point, right, is that like current set of Pendle V2, even though it works, there exists some bottleneck in the current setup. The AMM itself requires quite substantial liquidity in order for the like trades to take place, like trades with size to happen without incurring price impact. So that is an aspect that we hope to improve on, and we want to improve on it by introducing a new implementation scheduled for end of the year. And hopefully we can also be more chain agnostic as well, because one of the shortcomings that we see with Pendle V2 right now is that if we want to support assets that are sitting on Solana, for example, we have to first deploy Pendle on Solana before we can list the assets on Solana. But with the new implementation, I hope that we can be much like all these chain differences can be abstracted away, such that users can trade a wider spread of assets by interacting with Pendle without having to think about the chains where the assets originating from. And as for, I think, challenges, it's really about guarding against the complacency, because I think I mean, this is our 4th year, but most of the traction happened in the last couple of months. So I'd say like we have achieved these traction because of the foundational work that we have invested in the last couple of years. But even then, right, because of the magnitude of the traction that we are experiencing, staying level-headed is still very important. And staying hungry so that we can keep a constant lookout on new opportunities that we can work on and better serve the ecosystem. Yeah.
Okay, so interest of time, I think we have about 30 seconds. Any last kind of updates, product launches? I know you've alluded to stuff for events, and or if it would be too lengthy, how can users, get involved or stay informed of this?
The best way is on Twitter. So Pendle's Twitter account is Pendle_FI. And then Telegram is another very good outlet for information as well. For Telegram, it's Pendle Intern Notes.
Yeah. And if they want to contact you directly, what's yours? No, just kidding. I'm joking. But okay, yeah. Well, it was very informative. Like I said, it's been great seeing like when we first met and how you've been able to grow and stuff like that. And I'm sure it's going to continue. And thanks for joining me on the fireside chat. And thanks again to everyone that tuned in, and to Kun Tai, Kun Gift of from the SCB and the rest of the SCB team. So thank you, everyone.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Thanks, John.